around here so you can see the baby. There's my Alex. My hand's shaking. It's all pooey in here. My grandson didn't come clean out my goat stall this weekend. Oh, say mommy got bronchitis. Hey, baby Alex. This is my Alex that went to live in another home for a year. And then he came back to me about 3 weeks ago, maybe. Because his family moved to Florida. And they loved him so much. He was the house goat last year. His mama rejected him. She had 2 babies. And the year before, she had been a good mama. But she was a group of 3 mean girls. But she'd been a good mama the year before. But that year, she had birth during the night. And she had twins. And when I got out here, she had already killed the other twin. I guess she killed it. It was dead. It was a little doe. And she was being really mean to Mr. Alex here. And she would not, she was kicking him. Not just wouldn't let him latch, but, she was being really, really aggressive towards him. And, so we had to take him in the house. And we had to milk her. And, we had several other does really in good milk. So he had plenty of milk. But we milked her really good for the first few days. And so he got lots of good colostrum. But he never got anything but from a bottle in the house. And so he was in a diaper and onesie in the house for at least a good 9 or 10 weeks. And he didn't like coming outside and learning that he had to be a goat. He was in the house with me and the Dobermans and the other dogs. And so Alex grew up convinced that he was an inside dog. He is still quite convinced of that. So we brought this little one here, who was a triplet from last year, who was the runt of her triplets. She was really passive, really kind of skittish, so she was the runt of the triplets. We brought her in for about a week before we put Alex out, so they could kind of buddy up and bond really well before we put Alex out full time. And so he'd have a little buddy. And then when the people came looking for goats, they said, no goats with horns, no goats with horns. I said, okay, because I had some polled goats. And because I don't burn my goat's horns. And she's naturally polled. So they wanted her, and they did not want Alex because he had horns. And I had a few other little polled goats. But once they met Alex, they changed their mind about the horns, which I figured they would. And they had him a year, and they brought him back a few weeks ago because they're moving to Florida. And they're going to be renting a place down there in Florida, and they could not take 2 goats. And they had a few horses, which they were going to sell because they could not take horses. And the husband was crying. He was squatted down in front of Alex for a very long time with his hands on each side of Alex's neck and his head laid over on Alex's face, telling him goodbye. And I reminded him that he did not want a goat with horns. And he said that was the best time he's ever glad he changed his mind about something, because he loves that goat and he's sure that goat loves him. And as you can see, he's like a Velcro dog. And he said that for the last year, everywhere he's gone, Alex, which they renamed Jordan for Michael Jordan. He said everywhere that he's gone for the last year, this goat has went with him. And they said he still always wants in the house, and he still thinks he's a dog. But this goat has been that man's buddy for the last year. He said if he's in the yard, Alex is in the yard, and if he's in the garage, Alex is in the garage. And so, yeah, Alex was his buddy, and they were very upset. But they said they were glad that, Alex was coming home to people that knew him and loved him. And so they ask when they get down there and they go to buy a place, if they can find a place that they're going to be able to have 2 goats back, would it be okay if they come get their goats back? And I said, yes, you can come get your goats back. And we had been calling her Angel, but they renamed her Brady for Tom Brady. So they've been Jordan and Brady for a year. But to us, they were Alex and Angel. And he's still my buddy. He's Mama Buddy. My sons always called him House Goat. And they said, Mom will never get rid of House Goat. So they were quite shocked last year when I sold him. Here comes Mama. Hey, Mama. Leave my juice alone. You got your own juice. There's Blanche. Hey, Blanche. There's Queen of the Castle Where Chloe. Hey, Chloe. Mama knocked Mama's horns were burned off before I got her, but she grows scurs in. A lot of times when they burn their horns off, they grow scurs in, and usually their scurs are loose, and hers are. She doesn't like them messed with. She knocked one of her scurs off the other day, headbutting with Alex. I came out here and her horn was knocked off, and she had a bloody spot right there where her horn came off. And Alex had blood all over his horn right there. So they were headbutting and her horn got knocked off. Usually her scurs don't get that big. She knocks them off before they get that big. I was telling somebody the other day about my La Manchas. I had a La Mancha I sold a couple weeks ago that had no ears. These are the elf ears. Give me your ears. Usually she doesn't mind me messing with her ears. She doesn't like me messing with her scurs. Chloe doesn't mind me messing with her ears. This is Mama's baby, Chloe. She got little elf ears, don't you, baby? She got little elf ears. Some of the La Manchas have elf ears and some have no ears. Chloe was the first baby goat born on our farm. She's Mama's baby. Chloe was dame raised. She was raised by her mama, but she's a lap goat because I'm out here with them hours every day. So, my babies this year weren't friendly though, because I came home right while they were birthing. I came home from Florida and I was in the bed for 3 months basically with COVID, which Mama got mastitis this year. So her babies were in the house. Her 2 babies were in the house on bottles in diapers. So they were my COVID buddies for 3 months. I just sold them a few weeks ago. That is the only baby we retained this year. That's Blanche, the little tiny brown goat. That's her baby from this year. She only had one this year. She usually has twins. And we're not going to sell her. Everybody wants her because her eyes and her face are beautiful. But she is super small. Um, she probably will not get a whole lot bigger. And the only way I would ever sell her would be to somebody that had, that specifically bred, hello, Mr. Alex, that specifically bred very small minis. Because if anybody breeds her, she's not going to be able to birth. And I'm afraid somebody would try to breed her with a Nigerian dwarf or something. And especially if they would do something like try to breed her with a Nigerian dwarf that is a runt, that would be like a small Nigerian dwarf. And even though it might be a Nigerian dwarf that's like a runt of triplets or something, that has nothing to do with that Nigerian dwarf's genetics, that he's going to pass on to his offspring. And then she is going to die in labor trying to give birth to those offspring because she will not be able to pass them. And Blanche had a baby a few years ago. She had twins. Blanche, as you can see, is, in my opinion, barely big enough to breed. So I'm very careful what I breed her with. She's still nursing, and that baby, yes, is more than old enough to be weaned, but they do that. Mama, like I said, this is the first year she had mastitis, and so I had to, when we were in Florida, she delivered, and my son took hers when they were 2 or 3 days old. My son and daughter-in-law had to take hers and put them on a bottle until I got home from Florida. And, hello, Mr. Alex. But she'll normally, I mean, if like with Chloe, if she has access to them, she'll nurse them till they're 9 or 10 months old. And she's the only goat I have, too, that will almost let them nurse on demand as much as they want, to where the babies will get milk goiter. A lot of moms are really stingy about how often and how much they let them nurse. And Mama will let them nurse almost whenever they ask to nurse, and she'll let them nurse as long as they want until the babies release and walk away. So Mama's babies get thick. Mama's babies get thick, don't they, Mama? She loves being a mama. But anyway, Blanche had a baby a few years ago, and named Surrey, that we retained. And Surrey was like this one here. It was going to be, smaller than Blanche. She was smaller than Blanche, and it was our fault. We only had this chain link fence between an intact buck and our does. Instead of having the intact bucks down on that end where we could close them on the other side of that fence and close that gate, we had that gate open so the intact bucks had more room. We had an intact buck that had access to this end. Well, I guess that intact buck got to her through this chain link fence, so that was our fault. My fault. And she got pregnant, and by the time I realized that she was pregnant, I mean, nothing could be done at that point. And so I just hoped she had twins or triplets and they were small enough for her to pass, and I hoped for the best. And she didn't. It looked, I mean, I never opened her up, but it looked to me, there's my turkey babies. There's my turkey babies. They're in there on their own for right now. But it looked like it was probably one big one. You know, and it probably wasn't a huge baby, but compared to her, and she was in labor. I mean, the only thing that ever came out was one hoof. And as soon as I saw that hoof, the hoof was as big as her hoof. So we knew immediately that wasn't going to be an option. And of course, it was, I think, a Friday night. And our farm vet, our horse vet, is 80 or 81 now. And he's only a mile down the road. And I've occasionally, his partner left. His partner went to Arizona. And he has searched in vain for another partner and couldn't find one. And he, at his age, cannot take call 24/7 to do farm calls. Which this wouldn't have been a farm call anyway, because I'd have had to take her in for a C-section, which meant he'd also needed, you know, a vet tech in there to do his anesthesia and stuff. And, you know, so it's not like I could just show up on his doorstep. I've done that a few times just because he's, you know, a neighbor with dogs that were dying that I knew I couldn't get an hour and a half to the emergency vet. But, you know, the emergency vet won't see goats. They're definitely not going to do a C-section on a goat. I called everywhere. The few farm vets that would do emergency calls in office would not sedate a goat. You know, you just have, it depends on what vet's on call, and goats are infamous for not doing well with sedation. And, you know, after hours and hours, I mean, we lubed up and went in, and there was no way that goat's head was coming through her pelvis. It was a horrific thing, and we had to put the goat down. It was horrible. It was horrible. So I'm not selling this goat for somebody to try to breed her because she's gorgeous and have that happen. I only had one intact buck. He was a purebred myotonic, who was the father, her father, and the father of all my babies this year was my registered myotonic. And I sold him about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I'm not buying another intact buck, so I'm not going to breed any more goats. I don't foresee that in the future. With my age and my health, I just don't think I want to keep doing spring and fall babies. This last year, I've sold almost all my goats. I'm down to 6 goats that I love. Well, except for Blanche's baby. I mean, I don't have any great affection for Blanche's baby that we retained. But Blanche is like the bottom of the pecking order as far as the goats go. So she doesn't really have a buddy. You know, so that's another reason I want to retain her baby, because her baby's her buddy. You know, that way Blanche has a buddy. And, because all goats need a buddy. Goats are super social, and Blanche needed a buddy. So I think that was the best all around. My turkeys. I never knew how friendly turkeys were until a few weeks ago. My son, my oldest son, came in dragging 2 turkeys from Tractor Supply. And I guess that's one of the few animals I have not had is turkeys. Well, these things are so friendly. And from what I've researched, turkeys are super dumb and super friendly. And they were in the house for a couple weeks, but we finally moved them out here about a week ago, and they've been doing pretty good out here. But they're the broad-breasted kind, I think is what they're called. And unfortunately, I guess they're raised to be meat birds. I got a broiler chicken one time that had got accidentally thrown in my batch of chickens. And it got, oh shoot, I blanked on it. What's it called? Bumblefoot. Because they're not, raised to live full lives and lay eggs, and they're raised to grow super fast, and they outgrow their feet and their legs, and you're supposed to slaughter and eat them, when they're still young, and we don't really do that here. So I don't know what I'm going to do when these things develop bumblefoot. And I guess these kind of turkeys get breathing problems because they just outgrow, their bodies really quickly. They outgrow the physical limitations of their bodies. So I hate that because they're really sweet little turkeys. So now my husband, who was at work when my son came dragging these turkeys in, has said I can buy some heritage turkeys because they don't, they're not meant for meat like that. So they can live like 10 years, but I don't know about getting a turkey that I don't think I can outlive. I don't know what my husband's going to do with all these goats when I die. I hope he finds them a good home. But I would like to have some heritage turkeys, maybe. He could probably find them a good home. I know he wouldn't get rid of my goats to somebody he thinks would eat them. He knows I love my goats. I didn't have a tight bond with all my goats, but he knows the ones I have now, I really love. He wouldn't sell them off for meat or anything. Hey, Kaya's opinions. We're talking about animals. These are turkeys. Baby turkeys. Yeah, I had my phone out there in the sun earlier, and it's been like 100, but it's like 94 or something right now. I guess my phone overheated after about 20 minutes, so I had to come in here in front of the fan. I need to get him a better fan. I love animals too. I got all junk fan. My husband screwed up out here for the animals, so it stays a lot cooler out here in the goat shed. My husband had to patch up my shed for me. I went to the animal swap and bought, like an idiot, bought 3 pigs. I thought that'd be a good idea to buy. I think they were like Vietnamese mini pigs or something. Well, they still ended up like 120 pounds. And they were good little pigs, but my gosh, they tore up everything and had holes going everywhere. And not we, I say we because my husband pays for it, but I do it. I take in horses on a semi-regular basis. I take ponies. They're all ponies mostly. Some of them are pretty large ponies. Some of them are big enough to almost be classified as a horse. And I take in minis from, a lot of them come from rescues, auctions, the ASPCA, things like that. Somebody will call me. I almost never go looking, but like I'll get a phone call from somebody and say, ASPCA in North Carolina's got a horse or got a pony, and they're going to put it down because nobody's claimed it, and it's emaciated, and it's got a rhinos, and they're going to put it down. And I say, oh, no, they're not. I'd love to have a great big farm, but I just have a small farm. I just have a small farm and a goat named Alex. So, I didn't even have a horse trailer at that time, and I called my husband, and I said, baby, I need a horse trailer. I got to go to North Carolina and get a horse. He was at work, and he found me a really nice horse trailer to hook up to his truck and go to North Carolina and get me a pony from the ASPCA. And all he needed his teeth done. He needed his teeth floated, and he needed his hooves took care of, and he needed about 7 months to put on weight. And, he needed gelded, of course. And so I put, in medical care, we put about $600 or $700 in him, and then 7 months of feed. And then I sold him to a family with a 7-year-old little girl that needed her a pony. And he was a wonderfully calm pony. He was a wonderfully calm pony that took right to a saddle. And I sold him for $300. And I was so proud that I then had $300 to buy hay. So we only went a little bit under on him. Not too under, just a little bit under. Hey, Blanche. Just a little bit under. I go under on all my horses. But I get phone calls sometimes at midnight from the auction. And people will say, there's 2 ponies getting ready to load up on the truck to go to slaughter. And I have room for them on my trailer, but I don't have room for them in my barn. Will you take them? And I say, bring them to my house and I will take them. And they bring them to my house and I take them. And I get them healthy. And I get them as calm as I can get them. And then I start looking for them an appropriate home. And I sell them for a couple $100 each to what I feel like is a home that they'll be appropriate in. Whether that's a home that's going to put a saddle on them, or that's a home that's going to let them be a pasture pony. But my husband's done a really good job of, that's our yard for our dogs, because we got big, crazy, whacked out dogs. And then around that, he's built me these areas that we've got divided, into sections, so that when I get new goats or horses or anything like that, I can close gates and quarantine people off for a while and keep stallions away from everybody until they're gelded. And you know, whatever I need to do. And we've got all this. You can see there's holes here. That's one of the reasons I had to get rid of, which they're getting filled in now. My pigs dug all along my fence line here, which this fence is buried to keep my dogs from being able to dig over here to get to any of my animals. I had some chickens that were really bad even after I clipped their wings. They would fly that fence, and if the Dobermans caught them out there, they were Doberman food. And then we've got this. Goats love to jump up on that stuff. And sometimes I throw a few minis. I need to tear all this down. It's all falling in. I ain't had minis over here for a while, so I ain't worried about it. Minis go in that little thing down there sometimes. What are you guys doing following me? We started a family cemetery out here. My son died. I was so grieved. I couldn't take the thoughts of him being away from home in the middle of winter when he died in December. So I had him buried right there. He's out here. I need to have my husband weed eat this. Yeah, they do. They follow me around everywhere. Here they come. And right after my mom and dad died. And Logan had asked in his will to be buried between my mom and dad, me and my husband. So when mom and dad died, they're buried next to him. And eventually me and my husband will be buried on the other side of him. My grandkids come out here with me and dig in the sand. I live in a sand pit. Sugar gliders. I've heard they are so smart and so friendly. And I think people buy those and they don't realize that they have a really long lifespan and they're super social and they're a really big commitment. And then after like a year or two, it's like they're just done with them. But I've heard that sugar gliders can really bond to people. So they're kind of devastated. Oh, thank you for sharing Logan's story. But yeah, I've heard that sugar gliders bond. And so they get really depressed when their people like give them up. And I think people get them thinking they're just like fancy hamsters. And they're not. Come on, guys. You have a what? An MA? What do you mean an MA? I'm not sure what you mean. Oh, a male. He is 6. His owner died of COVID. Oh my gosh, that's so sad. Oh, he's doing better now. That's good. That's good. Oh, your dog sent it too soon. Yeah, I've heard, like I said, I've heard that sugar gliders really bond and they live like, I think I've heard like 15 years or something. So that's like a really big commitment that people, I think, aren't expecting when they buy one. And that's what I was saying about turkeys. Like, that's what I was saying. I think right before you came on, I was talking about my turkeys. These turkeys I really like. I've never had turkeys before, but I found out these are the meat kind of turkeys. So they don't have a long life expectancy at all. Like, at all. So my husband, who was totally anti-turkey before, has seen how much I really like these turkeys because I didn't know turkeys were so super friendly, much more than chickens. And so he now says I should buy some heritage turkeys because those do have a much longer life expectancy and they're still super friendly. But they have a life expectancy of like 10 years. And I said, I don't know if I should buy turkeys that I don't think I can outlive. So, hello, Miss Angel. But I don't know. I mean, I'm sure if I die, my husband will be able to find an appropriate home for these turkeys because he's going to have to find, hello, Miss America, my beautiful, beautiful girl. I'm sure he'll have to find a home for my goats, and he will not find an unfit home for my goats because he knows how much I love my goats. Um, I mean, because, yeah, after Logan died, which I didn't do anything for 6 months. Anything. I laid in the bed. Y'all, I was going 2 and 3 months without bathing or brushing my hair. It was bad. It was bad. People were sitting on the side of my bed and feeding me. I had shut down. Without my family, I literally would not have survived the first 6 months. But you know, 6 months after Logan, my father died very unexpectedly. And that sent me, and my father lived with us. My mother and father had lived with us for several years because they had gotten elderly. My father had gotten very ill and lost a lot of weight, and they had moved in with us. And you know, I had managed to get about 50 pounds back on my father, and he had made a great recovery and was doing really well. Fortunately, when Logan died. So, you know, they did not need me to wait on them hand and foot when that happened because I was not able to. And so when I was barely coming out of my bedroom, and then my dad died. And I lost the little bit of progress I had made to be able to come out of my bedroom and change clothes occasionally. I lost. And any progress my mother had made, she lost. And then 7 months later, my mom died from, they said they thought it was a heart attack, but I think she had a stroke. But either way, my mother died in our home in her sleep. So in just under 13 months, I lost my child and both of my parents. All unexpectedly. And my husband has saved me. And my animals have saved me. And I wanted to sell my goats. And my husband, really, really, Alex, we're going to headbutt people now? My husband would not let me sell my goats. He would not. Because he said if he, which my dogs laid up in the bed with me every day, and I got up every evening and fed them and stuff when my husband was out of town. But he said if he sold the goats, I would never get out of bed again and go outside. And he's right, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. But he said he knew I loved my goats and that I didn't want to get up and get dressed. And sometimes I'd slosh out here in a nightgown and flip-flops. The same nightgown and flip-flops I'd had on for 2 weeks. But at least I got out here. And once I'm out here, it's not unusual for me to stay out here for hours. Because sometimes I would just come out here and I would feed them, and then I would sit down and 2 or 3 of my lap goats would just lay in my lap. And because back then I had like 30 goats. But I had quite a few lap goats. You know, this is my main lap goat here. And so once I was out here, you know, I was out of the house for hours before I would drag, hello baby, are you pawing mommy? I would be out here for hours. And he was right. If I had sold the goats, I would not have come outside ever. I would have just curled up in the bed, which his company did after Logan died. They made sure he was home. Other than every great now and then when it was a have-to case, he was basically home every evening for 3 years, which is really unusual with his work. But they did that because they knew, what is it, baby? It's not a snake, is it? Stay away. Is it a snake? What'd you see? I think my goat might have seen a snake. Goats don't do well with any kind of venom at all, like at all. Even if you see them get bit, if you see them get struck and take them straight to the vet, it doesn't matter. They still, 98% of the time, they're going to die. We had one last year. I mean, I found it, which it had been a little while, but it wasn't too long after the bite. And we get lots of copperheads. It wasn't too long after the bite. And of course, the vet immediately said we should put him down. But his name was Squirt, and I absolutely loved him and didn't want to put him down. I wanted to try everything. And we poured probably $1,000 into trying to save him. Oh, yep, huge snake. Right there he goes. It's a black snake. Hold on, let's kill it. Watch out, let Mommy kill a snake. And all it did was drag out my goat dying inside of my house for 4 days. And watch out, Chloe. Mommy found a shovel. Let's go find the snake. Because he will eat our baby turkeys. He looked like he was pretty good size. He'll definitely eat my turkeys if he finds them. Oh, see, he's going in my turkey stall. Right there he goes. See him going in my turkey stall? Let's grab him. Get your ass out here. I'm going to have to lay the phone down because I'm about to wrestle a snake. Hold on. Chloe, go on. Mommy's fighting a snake. Oh, God, he's wrapped around something there. I can't get him out. He's dragging the other direction. I wish I had a body cam on you guys could watch this wrestle. I can't get him out. I had to let him go, y'all. He's wrapped around something. Woo! Well, I got him out. Hold on, my bronchitis, I can't breathe. I was bending over trying to pull him out. I've got bronchitis. I saw the doctor Friday. They put me on meds, but that bending over and pulling on him, whoo! Did you see him on the ground right there behind the barn before he went in? He's pretty long. He looked like he's about 6 feet maybe. I'll measure him when I get him out. Chloe, get away from that snake. And little goats are just naturally curious and trusting. I could only pull him out about 2 feet and I could not get him any further out. He's in there wrapped around something. We've got underneath this whole thing in here, there's real heavy duty pallets. So he's probably wrapped around those pallets. And the pallets have bales of hay on top of them. So I cannot pull him off of those. I'm going to have my husband come move all his hay. I killed one a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. That's back when I was kind of crazy. I didn't see a shovel handy, and he was about 7 feet. I didn't want him to get away. I had a bunch of baby ducks and baby chickens. And so I snatched him up right behind his head and grabbed a pair of scissors that was laying there that I had used to cut the twine off some hay. And I cut his head off with a pair of scissors. So I don't like snakes. Yeah, he's after the turkeys, and he's after my chicken eggs. That's what he's after. I'm I'm a little bit scared of snakes, but once you kill snakes with, I used to have some cinnamon chickens. Those are $250 chickens. And once you get your hands on some of those eggs and you pay a fortune for the eggs, and then you manage to get some of them to actually hatch, and then you come out here and there's a 6 or 7 foot black snake that has a $250 baby chicken dead in its mouth, and the only thing sticking out is legs. Yeah, you will get over your fear of snakes and learn to grab up a snake and cut its head off with a pair of scissors. Now, a rattlesnake, I'm not messing with a rattlesnake. No, I'm not messing with a rattlesnake. But a copperhead is not nearly as poisonous as a rattlesnake. But a copperhead is deadly to my goats. And I will kill them in a heartbeat. And I will definitely kill a black snake because they eat up all my stuff. I mean, I used to be so soft-hearted. I used to not kill the mice. But they get into all my feed and they ruin my feed. I mean, I used to find like nests of baby mice and I would relocate the nests. I used to not even mess with the nests. I would just recover whatever was over the nest and leave it because they were babies and I felt horrific. But I mean, it literally got to where I had, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of mice out here. And so at that time, I had a bunch of Polish hens. And I trained my Polish hens to eat all the mice. Like they would go down in holes and I would spray the water hose. And so the chickens would follow me around. If I had the water hose, they would follow me around. And, I'm finally catching my breath. And if I'd spray in a hole, the chickens would start running around like crazy chickens, waiting to see what holes the mice were going to come running up out of. And they would go crazy chasing those mice and fight over the mice. Oh yeah, the chickens loved it. So the man that I sold all my Polish chickens to called me about 3 or 4 days later and asked me what the deal was with the chickens and the water hose. Because he said every time he gets the water hose out, the chickens go crazy chasing him around and he doesn't know why. So I had to explain it to him. But yeah, the whole summer it was like me and the chickens were a team. See if I see. I bet he's in here up under that. See, that hay is sitting on real big, heavy-duty pallets. So I bet he is up under that hay inside those pallets. Hello, my baby turkeys. All right, well, I'm going to get off the live and I'm going to call my husband to come out here and move his hay for me. because my shoulder won't let me move bales of hay too great. And I'll let you know how the snake saga goes. I almost had him. If I could have grabbed that tail a little bit quicker, I think I could have got him out of there. But thanks for sticking on the live with me. Bye. Talk to you later.